to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I'm going to talk about day 3 prospects at the edge rusher position for the New York Giants. After all, we know the New York Giants need to get after the quarterback. They didn't do the best of jobs at fixing that in free agency. A lot of Giants fans wanted them to go out there and try to pick up a guy like Yannick Ngakoue, Jadeveon Clowney, Marcus Golden, of course, is departed. And we have a lot of young, underdeveloped talent at that position, be it guys like Lorenzo Carter. We bring in a guy like Fackrell, O'Shane Zimenez, and hopefully they can prosper and get better. But the Giants could certainly look to try to add an edge rusher at some point in this draft. Now, this video, of course, is about day 3 prospects, meaning rounds 4 to 7. Now, a couple of these guys maybe could go in round 3, and maybe the Giants could be looking at them at pick 99. But regardless, these guys will not be going more than likely in the first 2 rounds of this year's draft, unless the team falls in love with one of the individuals. I picked out 4 guys that I think the New York Giants could certainly be looking at between rounds 4 and 7, and 3 of them have connections potentially to the New York Giants coaching staff, some of them more, stronger than others, but I thought that was a really interesting aspect of the players that I went over. Of course, throughout this entire process, we've noticed that the New York Giants have really focused on guys that have had connections to the coaching staff at pretty much every free agent they brought in, so it only makes sense that that could play a part in the draft process of guys that the New York Giants may elect to take, specifically in the later rounds of the draft. In the first, second round, I think you're going for, the cream of the crop in terms of talent. But as it gets further into the draft, you're probably looking for guys, at least according to the pattern with this coaching staff, that, some of the coaches on this staff may have coached before. Another very interesting note that I wanted to bring up was 3 of the New York Giants impact free agents in this year's class came from Stanford University. And one thing that was interesting, one of the prospects I'm going to talk about also went to Stanford and had a very strong combine, which is why he started to move up the charts. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Let's jump into some of the prospects, go over some of the strengths of their game, and how I could potentially see them fitting the New York Giants at the edge rusher position. The first guy I wanted to talk about was Anfernee Jennings out of Alabama. Jennings I saw being mocked a lot earlier, earlier on in the process. So I even saw him going in the back end of the first round a couple of months ago in some mocks. He was known more to be a mid to late second round prospect. Now I've seen him start to fall into the 4th round or so. And obviously the connection here, if we're talking, connection, not that Joe Judge coached him, but he played at Alabama. Joe Judge was a special teams coordinator at Alabama. I'm sure he has a strong relationship to that of Nick Saban, and I'm sure Saban is going to give him the ins and outs of some of the better prospects that came out of the program this year. And Anfernee Jennings is certainly one of them, and a guy that could potentially fill a void for the New York Giants. The one thing I'll say about Jennings, doesn't seem like the most versatile player. Something that I think the New York Giants would be looking for. Is definitely not my favorite of these 4 guys I'm about to mention, but could be a guy that we're looking at. He stands at 6'3", 259 pounds, but let's dig in a little deeper. Here he is out of Alabama. Well, here it says 6'2", 256. I read 6'3", 259, but right around there. 32 7/8 inches on the arms, 9 1/8 on the hands. I don't believe he participated in the combine. Here's his stats. Played 4 years at Bama. I think it was 3 years as a starter. Over the last 2 years, he had 13.5 combined sacks with 2 interceptions. Not known as the greatest athlete in the world, but a very technically skilled player. Here's what they have to say about him. Alabama edge Anfernee Jennings is a true technician as both a pass rusher and run defender. His processing skills, responses, and technique all shine as an experienced defender for Nick Saban in the SEC. He has good functional strength, hand usage, and overall fundamentals. With that said, his lack of an explosive athletic profile and twitch are concerning when forecasting the impact he will have at the next level. Jennings has the upside to become a quality starter as a base end in a 4-3 defense at the next level. Of course, the New York Giants have a lot of players that are currently on the roster, some anyway, that were initially brought in here for a 3-4. Jennings doesn't seem like the most versatile player. I don't think the Giants would draft him, but maybe if they got him at the right price in the 4th or 5th round, due to the fact that he does have some upside, was a pretty strong college player at Alabama with ties to Saban. Definitely a guy you want to keep your eyes on, in the day of potential day 3 prospects at the edge rusher position. But he would not be my favorite player on this list. One player I really like, and I actually had him going in my 7-round mock draft. I think I had him going in the 6th. He could definitely go in the 5th. He might even go in the 4th. Derick Tusker. Derick Tusker killed it at the combine out of North Dakota State, and he has skyrocketed up the charts. The question with him was never hustle, never effort. That is one thing everybody knew he brought to the table. He was a high-effort player at North Dakota State, was not known as the best athlete, but a really good football player, something that I've expressed I think Dave Gettleman has looked for in the most recent drafts. Not necessarily the best athletes, but guys that are really good, hardworking football players. And that's what describes Tusker. But what really saw his draft stock shoot up was how well he performed at the combine, and he surprised people with his athleticism. They did not expect him to perform that well. And here's some of the things that people had to say about his combine. First, we'll pull up the stats. This was his stats at North Dakota State. He had a total of 29.5 tackles. He had 13.5 last year in his senior season, 7.5 in his junior season, 7.5 in his sophomore season. So over the last 3 years, he's had 28.5 sacks, pretty solid numbers. And a guy that's known as a guy that would fit in the 3-4 scheme on the outside linebacker position. Certainly a guy that the New York Giants could be looking at, but I think he's going to be a guy a lot of people are looking at in the day 3 rounds. He might even go in the 4th. I've seen him going mostly in the 5th or 6th area, and maybe the Giants will in fact look at him. Here's how he performed at the combine, and it's actually pretty startling. More importantly for his draft stock, we're talking about the only pure pass rusher to record a sub 7.00 in the 3-cone drill at the combine. Though a few linebackers would follow suit to their credit, aside from Shuttle, the offensive lineman, a sub 7 cone is one of the best individual indicators of a player's success in the NFL as a pass rusher, and almost universally leads to a jump in draft stock for players who hit it. Tusker is a bowler who deserves some more recognition, but now that he's raised some eyebrows, he may be getting it. And before the NFL Combine, I read several reports that people thought he would go undrafted. But Tusker, I think, will be drafted. I think he could be going as early as the 4th, as late as the 6th, and maybe he'll be on the New York Giants' radar. The next guy we're going to talk about is a guy that I think may have the strongest ties of any of the 4 prospects I'm going to talk about. And when I did some research on him, I am really excited about this kid if the Giants are able to grab him. I've seen him going in the back end of the 3rd, 4th, maybe the 5th, and that is Daryl Taylor out of Tennessee. Really like this connection to the New York Giants, and like I said, that has been a storyline through free agency, and I expect it to be a storyline potentially in the draft, and Daryl Taylor certainly has connections to the New York Giants coaching staff. Kevin Sherr, the inside linebackers coach for the Giants, coached at Tennessee last year, along with the New York Giants' new strength and conditioning coach. So it would only make sense that Daryl Taylor would be on the New York Giants' radar, and he's a guy that's versatile. I love this fit, and had I known everything I knew about him, I very well may have had him being mocked to the New York Giants in the 3rd or 4th round of my 7-round mock draft. But here's the book on Daryl Taylor. He stands at 6'4", 267, 33-inch arms with 9 3/4-inch hands. He's a senior out of Tennessee. Here is his statistics. Played 4 years at Tennessee. Fairly consistent player. He had a combined 16.5 sacks over his last 2 years, 19.5 career sacks, but the last 2 years is where you really saw him start to skyrocket. Had a combined 46 tackles last year and 8.5 sacks for Tennessee in the SEC Conference. Here is the player summary. Daryl Taylor projects as a potential base starter as a 4-3 defensive end or 3-4 outside linebacker at the next level. So there you go. Right off the bat, he's a guy that could play in multiple systems, something that the New York Giants are looking at. Taylor is in possession of adequate anchor and strong run fits in a defender, but his ability to provide consistent pressure off the edge is a bit too hit or miss. So there's the knock there. They say he doesn't get enough pressure off the edge. Taylor doesn't have elite length, nor has he shown mental processing keys to consistently diminish the edge. He's got some physical upside to work with, but his value is tempered by a lack of appealing qualities as a pass rusher, which is why Taylor is going to probably be going in day 3 or very late day 2, but a guy to keep an eye on. The New York Giants believe in their coaching staff, and this is a guy with proper coaching that a lot of people probably feel could reach his ceiling, being that he has a lot of good physical attributes, and his connections to the staff, I think, will definitely have him on the New York Giants' radar. And then finally, his best trait is his hand technique. His worst trait is his pass rush counters. And then finally, the last prospect I wanted to go over with you guys is a guy from Stanford. Like I said earlier in the video, the New York Giants brought in Cam Fleming, Blake Martinez, and Toy Folo, the tight end prospect, all of which went to Stanford. Stanford, of course, a very prestigious university in terms of academics. Joe Judge wants very smart football players, smart coaches. That is what you would probably get with this prospect coming out of Stanford. And that, of course, another player that really performed very well at the combine, and that being Casey Toohill. Now, Toohill didn't take off until this year. I think he had 8 sacks. We're going to get into the exact numbers, but his combine he really jumped off the chart. Again, right in that 4 to 6 round range, I've seen Toohill going in. But let's jump into some of the things people have to say about him. Considering his size, 6'4", 250 pounds, it is hard to not come away impressed with Casey Toohill's showing on Saturday. That, of course, talking about the combine. The tweener linebacker prospect ran a 4.62 40-yard dash, but stood out with his jumps. His 39-inch vertical jump was tied for the 3rd best in this year's group and was the same number Isaiah Simmons hit. While his 126-inch broad jump tied for 5th best, his 7.08 3-cone drill was one of the lower numbers in that drill. But his explosion for his size was a pleasant surprise. And then here were his numbers at Stanford. Like I said, he didn't really come on until his senior year. He has 14 career sacks, but he got 8 in his senior year. And I think he's going to be in that 4 to 6 round range. I like all these prospects of, potential late round prospects. There were a couple other guys I was going to point out. I had Jonathan Garvin. I had DJ Wanham. But these were the 4 guys I really wanted to go over. Tusker's a guy I continue to express that I am a big fan of if the Giants could get him in the 6th round area. But the guy that really stood out to me when I really went and did my research was the prospect coming out of Tennessee. We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out, but I wanted to give you guys some day 3 prospects at the edge rusher position. And Daryl Taylor may be a guy to keep your eye on. As always, guys, if you like what you watch, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.